Anthony is 24. He'll be 25.
You a grandpa yet?
Yes, I'm a grandfather.
For decades, he's maintained his brother's innocence, even showing his support with different flags and signage on his own home.
To the claims that have been put forth by Rodney Reed, his defense team, as well as the Innocence Project.
And then there was also a police officer, David Hall, who was a good friend and neighbor of Jimmy's.
And I know it's not something you want to think about, but should that come back and it points towards your brother, what's the next step?
Be more forthcoming with it, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel that this science is, in some way, was out there.
Information this time. So the Court of Criminal Appeals, which, by the way, is the state's highest criminal court.
Delve into the chilling depths of an impending ending as we embark on a riveting interview with a perilous ending row inmate. Brace yourself for gripping tales and unravel the enigma of a dangerous soul on the edge of eternity. Background. In the small town of Bastrop, Texas, the slaying of 19-year-old Stacy Stites in 1996 sent shockwaves through the community. Rodney Reed, an African-American man, found himself at the center of a gripping trial that would forever alter the course of his life. Stites' lifeless body was discovered on April 26, 1996, lying face up on the side of a country road. Partially clothed with her arms above her head, the marks on her neck indicated a brutal strangulation, slayed using a braided leather belt. The investigation revealed traces of sperm inside her, serving as a vital piece of evidence in the case. For nearly a year, the slaying remained unsolved, leaving the community in a state of fear and uncertainty. However, a breakthrough came when law enforcement officers decided to test the DNA collected from the crime scene against 29-year-old Rodney Reed. To their surprise, the DNA matched, providing the foundation for a prosecution's case against him. Prosecutors argued that the DNA was the equivalent of Cinderella's slipper, irrefutably tying Reed to the crime. During initial questioning by the police, Reed initially denied any knowledge of Stites. However, he eventually admitted to having a secret affair with her, which would explain the presence of his DNA. Reed revealed that he and Stites had engaged in a consensual physical relationship just days before her lifeless body was discovered. The revelation of the affair added a complex layer to the case. In a town where racial tensions and societal expectations loomed large, the relationship between Reed, a black man, and Stites, a white woman, engaged to a white police officer named Jimmy Fennell, became a risky secret. The racially charged atmosphere further amplified the significance of Reed's involvement in the case.
Sanders and photojournalist Heikki Mustonen spoke with Reed's attorneys and his brother about Wednesday's ruling.
That the clock got moved backwards and that Mr. Reed filed in a timely way and his litigation can now continue.
For decades, he's maintained his brother's innocence, even showing his support with different flags and signage on his own home.
Information this time. So the Court of Criminal Appeals, which, by the way, is the state's highest criminal court.
Stay strong until the end of whatever we're going through.
To me about the emotional roller coaster you've been on. What was your mindset?
Throughout the trial, the prosecution asserted that Reed had abducted, physically attacked, and ultimately strangled Stites before abandoning her body in a remote location. The semen sample found inside the victim's body, which matched Reed's DNA, served as the primary evidence against him. Additionally, a belt discovered at the crime scene was linked to Reed, further solidifying the prosecution's claims. They argued that Reed's motive for the heinous act was driven by the fear of Stites revealing their relationship to her fiancé Fennell. In the face of mounting accusations, Reed steadfastly maintained his innocence, vehemently asserting that his relationship with Stites had been consensual. He put forward an alternative theory, suggesting that Fennell, the police officer, was the likely perpetrator due to his history of violence and racist views. Reed's defense team worked tirelessly to present evidence supporting this theory, while simultaneously raising doubts about the credibility of witnesses and the reliability of the forensic evidence presented by the prosecution. Reed's case quickly gained national attention, attracting widespread controversy and impassioned advocates who believed in his innocence. Advocacy groups, legal experts, and celebrities joined the fight, expressing concerns over potential racial bias, inadequate defense representation, and the alarming possibility of Reed being wrongfully convicted. Multiple appeals and legal battles ensued, resulting in the postponement of Reed's ending date on multiple occasions. As of the knowledge cutoff in September 2021, Rodney Reed continues to languish on ending row, with ongoing efforts to introduce new evidence and seek a new trial that could potentially prove his innocence. His case serves as a poignant reminder of the flaws and injustices embedded within the criminal justice system, prompting discussions about wrongful convictions and the need for reform. The fate of Rodney Reed remains uncertain, and his story continues to captivate the public's attention. As the fight for justice persists, his case serves as a haunting reminder of the complex issues surrounding race, wrongful convictions, and the delicate balance between seeking justice for the victims and ensuring the fair treatment of the accused.
Death itself, you know.
Right. And it got to the point where you were even filling out paper.
And Anthony is 24, he'll be 25.
You a grandpa yet?
Yes, I'm a grandfather.
Ultimately, Rodney's the one who's advocating for a new trial for himself. I would love to just see him.
Through the claims that have been put forth by Rodney Reed, his defense team, as well as the Innocence Project, legal system calls findings of fact or conclusions of law. They will decide, the trial court judge will decide whether.
Unveiling the dark mind. Unlocking the enigmatic mind of Rodney Reed, the condemned ending row inmate unveils a psychological profile shrouded in mystery. Delve into the depths of his psyche, where secrets and hidden motivations intertwine, as we explore the dark corners of a mind entangled in a web of crime, passion, and deceit. Reed's psychological profile presents a compelling puzzle. What drives a man to commit such a heinous act? Was it a momentary lapse of reason, a calculated act of violence, or a complex interplay of personal demons? As we delve into the psyche of this dangerous inmate, we encounter a tapestry of factors that may have contributed to his actions. One intriguing aspect lies in Reed's clandestine affair with Stacey Stites, a relationship hidden from the prying eyes of society.
Where we will have further litigation, and hopefully it gets us one step closer to getting DNA testing one day. Pleasantly surprised in some cases how much DNA remains many years later, and that's what's been so frustrating.
Hinged on arguments over the statute of limitations and whether or not crucial DNA evidence could be examined.
You don't miss it until it's gone, you know, and a lot of people don't miss the simple thing, but then I do, you know, to my innocence.
So to know that you have more days that you're not.
The forbidden nature of their love adds an element of secrecy and intensity to the psychological landscape. Did this hidden romance fuel a desperate need to possess and control, ultimately culminating in a shocking crime? The influence of external factors cannot be discounted. Reed's troubled upbringing, exposure to violence, and societal pressures may have played a pivotal role in shaping his mindset. The intricate dance between nature and nurture unravels as we seek to understand how these influences shaped Reed's dark mind. Yet amidst the darkness, glimmers of complexity emerge. Can empathy coexist with violence? What lies beneath the surface of this convicted criminal? Is there a trace of remorse, a flicker of humanity, or an untapped potential for redemption? Exploring the psychological depths of Rodney Reed promises a gripping exploration of the human psyche pushed to its limits. As we journey into the shadows of Reed's mind, prepare to be captivated by a psychological portrait that challenges our preconceptions, raises uncomfortable questions, and shines a light on the intricacies of the human condition. Brace yourself for a riveting exploration as we peel back the layers of Reed's psyche and endeavor to comprehend the depths of darkness that reside within.
You know, all this stuff pertaining to my home.
And the analysis of those beer cans excluded you, but two other, and then there was also a police officer, David Hall, who was a good friend and neighbor of Jimmy's.
We've been asking that from day one. That's all we ever asked for, is the testing of all evidence.
Slaying, suspects, controversy. The case of Stacey Stites' slaying takes a complex turn, with additional information and potential suspects come to light. When her body was discovered, 2 beer cans were found nearby, both containing DNA. Surprisingly, the DNA did not match Rodney Reed, but pointed to 2 other potential suspects. Ed Salmella, a former Bastrop police officer who later died in what some question as a self-hurt, and David Hall, a police officer and a close friend and neighbor of Stites' fiancé, Jimmy Fennell. The involvement of these 2 individuals raises doubts and suspicions. Ed Salmella's brother does not believe his demise was a self-hurt, suggesting foul play. David Hall, on the other hand, could not be excluded as a potential suspect based on the DNA evidence found on the beer cans. These revelations cast a shadow of doubt on the investigation, especially considering the involvement of law enforcement personnel.
The killer's still out there?
You know, I know the killer's be more forthcoming with it, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel that this science is in some way was out there.
And you've been asked this a dozen times throughout the year, but you've got new audiences along the way, new generations, for instance.
And I know it's not something you want to think about, but should that come back and it points towards your brother, what's the next step?
To grant us testing. And we now go back to the Fifth Circuit to argue that we are allowed to have that testing happen.
Another significant development in the case involves Joe Bryant, who conducted an unauthorized investigation into Stacy's slaying. Bryant claimed that he believed the slayer was Jimmy Fennell, Stites' fiancé. Shortly after making this revelation to his wife, Maria, he was shot and slayed. Rodney Reed suggests that the Hispanic man accused of the slaying was used as a scapegoat, further fueling suspicions of a cover-up. Complicating matters further, Bryant's widow, Maria, claimed that before his demise, Joe told her he believed the slayer was Jimmy Fennell. Shortly after making this revelation, Joe was fatally shot. These circumstances raise suspicions and cast doubt on the veracity of the investigation. The situation appears to be a cover-up to Rodney Reed, as he reflects on the fact that those connected to the potential suspects or involved in the investigation have met untimely demises. This sense of a cover-up adds a layer of intrigue and raises questions about the integrity of the investigation into Stites' slaying. During the discussion, the participants include Bob Phillips, a criminal attorney representing Jimmy Fennell, and Bryce Benjet, Rodney Reed's attorney from the Innocence Project. Additionally, retired NYPD Detective Sergeant Kevin Gannon and victimologist Dr. Lee Gilbertson are present. The conversation turns to Fennell's violent history with women and physical attack, suggesting a propensity for such behavior. Fennell had previously pleaded guilty to a physical attack case, but Phillips asserts that his client has undergone significant personal transformation, emphasizing his current involvement in Christian ministry. However, skepticism remains, with acknowledgement that determining the authenticity of such a transformation will take time. The discussion highlights that there is no direct evidence linking either Fennell or Reed to Stites' slaying. While circumstantial evidence exists, such as complaints of violent physical attack against Reed, it is crucial to note that he has never been convicted in relation to those allegations. The dialogue underscores the need to approach the case impartially and consider all available evidence. Ultimately, the conversation raises significant questions about the investigation, the potential involvement of other suspects, the credibility of witnesses, and the possibility of a cover-up. The complexity and ambiguity surrounding the case of Stacy Stites' slaying underscore the need for a thorough examination of all evidence and a fair evaluation of Reed's guilt or innocence.
He's showing the world how they lied in court.
Told CNN there's overwhelming evidence that Rodney killed Stacy Stites beyond a reasonable doubt.
And Richard Hernandez, he was also convicted of some, because there was a phone call earlier that day where someone had said that he was the sheriff at the time. He's no longer in the police force. He don't have a law license.
Questionable conviction, evidentiary oversights. Rodney Reed's trial and subsequent appeal have raised serious concerns about the integrity of the judicial process. From the beginning, there were witnesses who could have testified about Reed's relationship with Stacy Stites, but most of them were not called to the stand, seemingly because of their familial ties to Reed. This raises questions about the defense team's handling of the case and their failure to present crucial evidence that could have shed light on the nature of the relationship and potential motives for the crime. Among the witnesses who were not called to testify were individuals who claimed to have knowledge of the affair between Reed and Stites and the threats made by Jimmy Fennell, Stites' fiancé at the time. Their absence from the trial further compounds the doubts surrounding the proceedings and the potential impact their testimonies could have had on Reed's defense. Over the course of the past 18 years, the case has garnered significant attention, with numerous investigations and inquiries revealing disturbing aspects.
Yeah, they're doing it now, and it's just scary that a person can easily be placed on death row just over it. And I'm looking at the dates and times, and this warrant had just been issued the day before. He's still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive, but he could not be excluded by those.
He couldn't be excluded.
Okay.
We're looking for me the week prior, so which that would have been like the end of March.
Joe Bryant's widow, Maria, has made the statement that before he was killed,
medical and forensic evidence, once thought to be conclusive, has been debunked, casting doubt on the original conclusions drawn from them. Additionally, witnesses, including individuals within Stites' own family, have come forward to acknowledge their awareness of the relationship between Reed and Stites. These revelations challenge the narrative presented at trial and raise further questions about the reliability of the prosecution's case. One of the most troubling aspects of the case is the behavior of Jimmy Fennell, a key figure in the investigation. There have been reports of concerning conduct on his part, both before and after Stites' slaying, as noted by law enforcement officers themselves. Some of this information, which could have been crucial to Reed's defense, was not made available to his lawyers prior to the trial, suggesting a failure in providing a fair and complete picture of the events to the defense team. Moreover, the courts, particularly Texas's Court of Criminal Appeals, have faced criticism for their handling of the case. Despite mounting evidence challenging Reed's conviction, the court has displayed what some perceive as a willful ignorance, seemingly motivated by a desire to uphold the original verdict. This has raised concerns about the impartiality and fairness of the judicial system in cases where new evidence emerges that challenges the integrity of a conviction. The troubling web of injustice surrounding Rodney Reed's case highlights the need for a comprehensive review of the trial proceedings and the appeals process. It calls into question the reliability of the evidence presented, the adequacy of the defense's representation, and the objectivity of the courts involved. As the case continues to gather attention, it serves as a reminder of the importance of ensuring justice is served and that all individuals are given a fair and impartial trial based on a complete and accurate presentation of the facts.
Have months ahead watching this case. Here's what happens now. The case, according to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals,
they were requesting for the paper to be filled out. You know, it was the same day I was having a visit, and I wasn't really thinking about them at that time. Right at the moment of filling that out, it was really like hard.
What has your life been like in this facility?
What has my life been like in this facility?
Of his peers, where the state has to put forward evidence that it knows exists that supports his innocence.
Emotional roller coaster. Rodney Reed, an ending row inmate, shared his thoughts and experiences during an interview with Noel from Fox in Austin. Reed reflected on the emotional roller coaster he has been on, particularly as he faced the prospect of his scheduled ending. Reed recounted that just a week ago, he was aware that his ending date was looming overhead. The knowledge of a specific day set for his demise had a profound impact on his mental state. He described the experience as a tumultuous roller coaster ride, especially considering his firm belief in his innocence. Being innocent and facing such a fate added to the complexity of his emotions as he witnessed other inmates come and go. To cope with his circumstances, Reed shared that he turns to meditation, reading, and listening to the radio. Engaging in these activities helps to distract his mind from dwelling on thoughts of demise and allows him to focus on maintaining his mental well-being. He avoids fixating on demise itself and strives to find peace through spirituality and communication with God. One significant moment that caught the attention of many was when Reed was seen filling out paperwork related to his impending ending. Reflecting on that moment, Reed admitted that it was difficult to decide who would want to witness such a somber event. It was a stark reminder of the gravity of his situation and the weight of the decisions he had to make regarding visitors during his ending. Reed, a father of 3 sons and a grandfather, revealed that his family is always on his mind. However, at the time of filling out the paperwork, his thoughts were consumed by the immediate task at hand. The sudden realization and the awkwardness of discussing these arrangements with his family during a visit added another layer of emotional complexity. Throughout his 17 years on Ending Row, Reed has strived to maintain humility and navigate the challenges of prison life.
Client was a gentleman who was conducting an unauthorized investigation into Mexico. What do you think of that?
I honestly think that they used that Hispanic guy as a scapegoat.
And had justice because there's evidence, there's testimony, there's medical forensic science out there.
That he made the choice that he made, and that regardless of what has happened,
and they will likely have a series of hearings or one big hearing where they go by this information and these new claims.
He described his daily routine as repetitive, with limited time outside of his cell for activities such as recreation or showers. Looking out through the glass window, he longs for the simple joys of life, such as walking freely, seeing the moon and stars, and breathing fresh air. Lastly came the unexpected news for Reed, an indefinite stay of ending. The news initially came from a fellow inmate which Reed thought might be a joke. However, upon hearing it himself, he questioned what the courts were considering and how they would evaluate the new evidence and scientific findings presented in his case. Reed acknowledged the roller coaster of emotions he has experienced throughout his journey. Despite his stay of ending, he remains on ending row, reminding himself that he is still imprisoned and fighting for his innocence. The new developments have not drastically changed his demeanor as the uncertainty of his future persists. When discussing the case itself, Reed expressed frustration that he believes all the evidence and information were available from the beginning. He feels that various law enforcement agencies, including the Attorney General's office, Texas Rangers, and local police departments, had access to the evidence but were not forthcoming. He believes that the truth has been concealed, denying justice to Stacy's family and perpetuating the system's flaws. Reflecting on his innocence, Reed adamantly reiterated that he had nothing to do with the crime. He lamented the fact that the same justice system responsible for his incarceration is also entrusted with safeguarding society. Reed emphasized the importance of public awareness and understanding the vulnerability of being falsely accused and sentenced to demise. Rodney describes the impact of knowing the date set for his ending and the difficulty of facing demise when he maintains his innocence. He explains that he finds solace in speaking to God, meditating, reading, and listening to the radio to distract himself from the impending ending. He mentions the discomfort of filling out paperwork related to his ending as it felt like signing his life away. Despite the uncertainty surrounding his future, Reed remains hopeful that the truth will prevail and justice will be served. He eagerly awaits the opportunity to embrace his family, particularly his grandchildren, and cherish the simple moments that freedom affords. Reed desires the public to know his unwavering innocence and the urgent need for a thorough examination of the evidence in his case.
Closure to all the tension and emotions they felt as this evening they put to rest the first capital murder trial.
Breaking news this afternoon, Rodney Reed will not be executed next week.
Moved it before my eyes and there was nothing I could do.
Why is it you who did not do the crime? You did not hurt Stacy. Tell me why.
I went straight to the sheriff. What's going on with this case? And he said, well, yeah, you've been charged with delivery of cocaine.
Rodney's reflections. Rodney Reed opens up about the injustice he has faced and the toll it has taken on his life. He begins by discussing the role of the police in society, highlighting the betrayal felt by many when a law enforcement officer engages in misconduct. Reed emphasizes that his status as a former police officer himself only adds to the weight of disappointment and fear experienced by young women who encounter police during traffic stops or other encounters. The conversation then turns to Reed's relationship with Stacy Stites, the victim in the case. Reed acknowledges that despite her engagement to someone else, there were genuine feelings between them. However, he also reveals that both he and Stites were involved in cheating on their respective partners at the time. Reed reflects on his youth and the lack of consideration for the consequences of his actions, but also expresses surprise and hurt upon discovering that Stites was involved with multiple individuals, not just him. This revelation sparks his curiosity about the possibility of other individuals being involved in her slaying, including law enforcement officers. Reed shares his mother's warning about the dangers he faced due to his relationship with Stites, but at the time, he did not fully comprehend the potential consequences. He describes his mindset as young and carefree, not fully considering the implications of his actions. However, as he delves deeper into the details of the case and discovers crucial information, he begins to question the narrative presented by the prosecution. The conversation then shifts to the discovery of beer cans as potential evidence in the case. Reed expresses his desire for his defense team to test the beer cans for DNA, believing that if DNA evidence was being used to convict him, there should be DNA pointing to someone else. However, his defense team's failure to call witnesses and pursue this avenue of evidence during the trial adds to his frustration and a growing sense of injustice.
Court of Criminal Appeals, and they ultimately have the final say about whether or not they agree.
I've been taken into the interrogation room, and while sitting there with David Board, I asked him, I said, well, Bond, I told my mom I'll see what I can do to see about it, and I'll see her tomorrow. No, I told her I'd see her later on that day, and I gave my mom a hug, kiss, and he was like, no, you're not going to get out. You're not getting out.
He's killing, and he was supposedly gunned down by a migrant worker from Mexico.
This process expected to take place until the end of next week, so a total of 2 weeks.
Reed recounts his interactions with the court, specifically mentioning the judge's refusal to stop the trial and allow his witnesses to be called. This shattered his hopes of presenting a stronger defense and further examining the potential evidence that could point to someone else's involvement. As the discussion progresses, Reed reflects on the impact of withheld evidence, specifically the DNA lab report that revealed the presence of Stites' DNA and DNA from 2 listed suspects on the beer cans. He expresses his disbelief that such critical evidence was not disclosed to the defense during the trial, raising serious concerns about the integrity of the prosecution's case. Reed also touches on his experiences with false accusations of physical attack, sharing the challenges and the toll it took on his life. He believes that he has been targeted and framed in multiple instances, causing him to lose out on opportunities and dreams, such as his chance to participate in the Olympics as a boxer. In the end, Reed shares his profound longing for his family, his children, and his grandchildren. He expresses gratitude for the opportunity to tell his side of the story, hoping that others will understand the pain he has endured and the need for justice. The interview concludes with a poignant reminder that this is not just his story, but one that affects the lives of his loved ones as well.
Put that timetable on it, even though earlier today it was recommended by the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles.
That before he was killed, he told her straight up that he thought the killer of being suspect in the case of Stacey Stites.
What doesn't look good for him?
Very closely.
Yeah, there's still a lot up in the air, Tony, after this decision today. What is the next step? What happens next?
The trial court in Bastrop County will essentially have to review all of this information. And so I've heard predictions of anywhere from 8 months, 9 months, maybe even up to a year.
What are they considering? What are they, you know what I'm saying? Because I've seen a lot of stuff where the courts would disregard certain stuff. I don't really know how they're really going to entertain it. But, you know, it is lab, so why are you guys catering to me like this, you know? And then I knock on the glass and I say,
Road to Justice. The investigation into Rodney Reed's case and the never-ending hunt for both justice and redemption are the subjects at the center of this stimulating discussion. Reed's conviction and the circumstances surrounding the demise of Stacey Stites, for which he was found guilty, have been the subject of several questions over the course of the past 18 years. The question of witnesses who were not called to testify at Reed's trial is at the core of the controversy surrounding this case. Many of the witnesses that could have shed light on the nature of Reed's relationship with Stites, as well as the threats that were made by her fiancé, were not summoned to testify, despite the fact that there were multiple witnesses available who could have done so. It raises questions about how the defense team handled the case and whether or not vital information was presented in an adequate manner to prove Reed's innocence. In addition, as more time has gone, fresh evidence and witnesses have come to light, further clouding the waters of Reed's guilt. The credibility of the prosecution's case has been called into question as a result of the debunking of medical and forensic evidence that was initially presented during the trial. Several people, including members of Stites' own family, have come forward as witnesses to corroborate that they were aware of the affair that was taking place between Reed and Stites, as well as the threats that were made by her fiancé. The actions of Jimmy Fennell, who was engaged to Stites at the time and who had previously served in the police force, have also been called into question. The behavior of Fennell, both before and after the slaying of Stites, has been the subject of allegations and concerns, which some law enforcement professionals have found to be quite disturbing.
That factors in, but then, you know, I've seen guys come, I've seen guys go, and it all...
What do you do when you're...
I speak to God. I do a lot of meditating. I read, view you know, doing your execution, that type of stuff, and your visitors, and quit playing. I said, no, I wouldn't play like that. I said, yeah, you gotta stay. So then I waited, and I heard it myself.
For him, obviously, in light of being suspect, not you, both of them are dead. What do you say to yourself about that?
It looked like a cover-up to me.
Fennell, and he's here along with Rodney's attorney from the Innocence Project, Bryce Benjett.
The information that could have been essential for Reed's defense was not made available to his solicitors before the trial, despite the fact that it should have been. The conversation digs further into the role of the courts, notably the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which has been criticized for its treatment of the case and is currently the focus of the discussion. In spite of the growing body of information that calls Reed's conviction into question and casts significant doubt on its legitimacy, the court has displayed what appears to be a willful ignorance and a biased approach. The struggle for justice in the case of Reed has been made much more difficult and perplexing as a result of this development. In the end, the purpose of this in-depth analysis is to bring attention to the urgent requirement for Reed's case to be thoroughly re-examined and for a serious effort to seek justice. This throws serious doubt on the fairness of his trial, calls into question the veracity of the evidence presented, and reveals faults in the way the judicial system works. There is still reason to believe that Rodney Reed can be redeemed, as long as there are those who are willing to contest the dominant narrative and fight for a more in-depth investigation in the facts.
Be comforted that way in a holding cell. There's like about 15 guys laying on a concrete slab somewhere.
Had a lot to say. We heard from a forensic pathologist. We heard from a former Bastrop County Reserve officer.
It's close to where the body is found. Another that's investigating the murder has concluded it's not you.
I must go back to Bastrop County. It is a district judge in Bastrop County who will review the claims.
Walking back down the corridors, I go to the cell. Well, they put me in a holding cell.
Potential faults in the case. The Rodney Reed case has been marred by several faults and inconsistencies that have raised significant doubts about his guilt. These faults can be categorized into three main areas.
Kids that dibble and dabble in relations and stuff like that. You know, kids do things, you know. My bad son got these grandkids, made a grandfather out of me. The police department, I want to know what went on, what's going on with this delivery charge. I wasn't delivering no drugs.
For victims' families to have to continue to relive this over and over and over again.
So which that would have been like the end of March. Okay, so I know that this one is fake.
Unreliable forensic evidence, witness recantations, and potential police misconduct. 1. Unreliable forensic evidence. A. Time of demise. One of the key pieces of evidence presented against Reed was the estimated time of demise of the victim, Stacy Stites. The prosecution claimed that Reed had physically attacked and slayed her on the morning of April 23, 1996. However, multiple forensic experts have since challenged this timeline, arguing that the evidence suggests she was slayed the night before, during a time when Reed had a confirmed alibi. B. DNA evidence. The prosecution presented DNA evidence from semen found in Stites' body, linking it to Reed. However, Reed and Stites were in a consensual physical relationship, which was initially denied by Stites' fiancé, Jimmy Fennell. Reed's defense argued that the presence of his DNA was a result of their consensual relationship and not proof of his involvement in the crime. The defense also pointed out the lack of DNA evidence from other potential suspects. 2. Witness recantations. A. Witnesses changed statements. Several witnesses who initially provided statements incriminating Reed have since recanted their testimonies. This includes Stites' cousin, who claimed that she had overheard Fennell threaten Stites because of her relationship with Reed. Another witness, a former inmate, admitted to lying about Reed confessing to the crime while in jail. These recantations undermine the credibility of the witnesses and cast doubt on the reliability of their original statements. 3. Potential police misconduct. A. Suppression of evidence. Reed's defense team has alleged that the prosecution and law enforcement officials suppressed key evidence that could have supported Reed's innocence. For example, they claim that crucial forensic evidence, such as the examination of the victim's clothing and the slaying weapon, was not properly analyzed or disclosed during the trial. This raises concerns about due process and the fairness of the trial. B. Racial bias. Reed's case also raises concerns about racial bias within the criminal justice system. The defense argued that the trial jury was racially biased due to the exclusion of potential black jurors. They claim that the prosecution used its peremptory strikes to remove black individuals from the jury pool, resulting in a predominantly white jury. This raises questions about the fairness and impartiality of the trial. These faults in the Rodney Reed case have generated significant controversy and have led to calls for a reevaluation of his conviction. They highlight serious concerns about the reliability of the evidence presented, witness credibility, and potential misconduct by law enforcement officials. Given these faults, many advocates argue that Reed's case warrants a thorough review to ensure that justice is served and to prevent the possibility of an innocent man being executed.
claims piece by piece. And essentially after that, the trial court judge will make what the legal or not, they agree with Rodney Reed's team or not. Then the case goes back to the Texas Court of
Cocaine. I said, is there a bond? And he said, yes, there's a $50,000 bond on it.
We're all hanging in there because we know that, the fight is not over yet.
I wasn't reporting back in 1996 and I wasn't in Austin at the time, but why?
For the officers to get pillow mattresses and blankets. And that's something that's really uncommon for someone to have.
That he thought the killer was Jimmy Fennell, and shortly thereafter he was shot and killed.
Yeah.
Impact on the society. The Rodney Reed case has had a significant impact on society, stirring discussions and raising awareness about issues related to criminal justice, racial bias, and the ending penalty. Reed, an African-American man, was convicted and sentenced to demise in 1998 for the slaying of Stacey Stites, a white woman. However, over the years, substantial evidence has emerged that challenges Reed's guilt and points towards his potential innocence. The case has sparked public outrage, highlighting systemic flaws within the criminal justice system and generating important conversations about racial disparities and wrongful convictions. One of the key aspects of the Rodney Reed case is the spotlight it has placed on racial bias within the criminal justice system. The case brought attention to the disproportionate rates at which people of color are arrested, convicted, and sentenced to demise. Reed's trial and subsequent appeals showcased a number of irregularities, including the exclusion of potential black jurors, which raised concerns about a biased process. This has fueled broader conversations about the need for reforms to address racial disparities within the criminal justice system and to ensure fair and equitable treatment for all individuals, regardless of their race or ethnicity. The case has also shed light on the issue of wrongful convictions. Reed's case has been plagued with inconsistencies and new evidence that cast doubt on his guilt. This has raised awareness about the possibility of innocent individuals being sentenced to demise or spending years in prison for crimes they did not commit. The public scrutiny surrounding Reed's case has led to a broader examination of the flaws within the criminal justice system, such as inadequate legal representation, the use of unreliable witness testimony, and the impact of systemic biases. This has prompted calls for increased safeguards to prevent wrongful convictions and to ensure that cases are thoroughly and fairly investigated before any irreversible punishment is imposed.
And I'm like, okay, now what is the state about? What are the courts are going to look for? The courts would disregard certain things, but then here it is. My understanding is that they're looking at.
Would you agree?
Well, you produced one case, and he pled guilty to that particular case.
Got exactly what they want. They got to cap the murder out of the deal, and that's what they wanted.
Glad that justice was served and that the system really does work.
You got to get magistrated and all this stuff here, and the judge is not going to be here until tomorrow. Well, I said, let me see my copy of the warrant. He goes, hey, there's just enough time to fabricate a warrant, and I'm looking, it's not going to be here until tomorrow. Well, I said, well, told my mom, I'll see you tomorrow.
Furthermore, the Rodney Reed case has contributed to the ongoing debate surrounding the ending penalty. Reed's impending ending attracted attention from activists, celebrities, and organizations advocating for the abolition of capital punishment. They argued that the possibility of executing an innocent person, combined with the racial disparities and flaws within the system, makes the ending penalty inherently unjust. The case has reignited discussions about the morality, effectiveness, and fairness of capital punishment, leading to increased calls for its abolition or, at the very least, for a moratorium on endings until the flaws within the system can be adequately addressed. Another societal impact of the case is the way it has galvanized public activism and grassroots movements. Advocacy groups, civil rights organizations, and concerned individuals have rallied around Reed's case, using it as a catalyst for broader reform efforts. Protests, rallies, and social media campaigns have been organized to demand justice for Reed and to raise awareness about the issues he represents. The case has inspired a wave of activism and solidarity, fostering a sense of urgency to address the systemic problems within the criminal justice system. In conclusion, the Rodney Reed case has had a profound impact on society, sparking discussions and prompting action on a range of important issues. It has highlighted racial bias, the potential for wrongful convictions, flaws within the criminal justice system, and the ongoing debate surrounding the ending penalty. The case has served as a catalyst for broader conversations about justice, equality, and the need for reforms to ensure a fair and equitable criminal justice system. As society continues to grapple with these complex issues, the impact of the Rodney Reed case will likely be felt for years to come. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.